It's Monday. That means Trump's been packing it in. He's been constipated since Friday afternoon. He's been wanting to talk to the press. What are we on about?
To say it's embarrassing. I did this over the weekend. I'm making a speech, and I acted like I was so proud. As I said, we've had 0 murders in the last week. And so
no, that is from the previous week.
Lastly, sir, this is an executive order on flag burning.
I've heard about this.
Sir.
Because the person that ran it said he spoke to it briefly twice about nothing. That means that all those pardons that he gave to some very bad people, very unpatriotic people, very evil people, it looks to me like those pardons are worthless. Because, number one, you shouldn't use an auto pen, very specifically. But if you do, it has to be...
How long is he going to go on about this, man? How long is he going to go on about the, what was it? It was the January 6th commission. It's been like, it's been nearly a year. Like, just do it or don't.
Very good reason. And they have to know that the president wanted it. The president didn't want this. The president didn't know he was alive, okay? He never approved
That's
any of this
true.
stuff. He wasn't for open borders and all the other things. He was never for open borders. I've known Biden a long time. He was never very sharp, but he was never in favor of open borders and all of the other things he did to destroy our country. Let's go.
Lastly, sir, this is an executive order on flag.
I've heard about that. Thank you. That's really funny, though.
Let's go. Could I
Yes,
ask you to say exactly what this is?
Of course. So as you've consistently identified, sir, cashless bail policies are a key driver of the disorder we see on city streets all over America. Catch and release system allows criminals to keep going back out onto the street and reoffending. What this executive order does, it charges your attorney general with identifying jurisdictions all over the country that have cashless bail policies, and then it withholds or revokes federal funds and grants that are flowing to those jurisdictions.
It's literally the only thing they can do through executive orders, and it's what they do like 5 times a day, every single new one. All they have is, hey, we're going to stop giving you money unless you do X. That's all they have. All they have.
To ensure that we're only supporting the people who have reasonable common sense policies around crime.
So what area does it cover?
Potentially anywhere that has a cashless bail policy. So some of the largest cities, some of the most left-wing.
Trump doesn't know. He doesn't understand the mechanism. He doesn't understand that all this is doing. He thinks they have direct jurisdiction. He doesn't realize all this is doing is saying like the DOJ will put pressure on. He doesn't understand how this works. He doesn't understand how the system works.
States in America
Almost all of them, right?
Illinois would be a great example of that, sir.
Oh, they have a great cashless bail. You don't even have to go to court sometimes. No, Illinois, I love that state. It's a great state, but it's run so badly by Pritzker. They threw him out of the family business, and he becomes governor. Now he wants to run for president. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay, we'll sign right here, right?
He's so catty. He's such a queen.
So important.
It's like an auto pen, really. I mean, he's about as mentally active as one. I don't think that's going to happen. God, he's funny.
Sir.
Because the person that ran it said he spoke to it briefly twice about nothing. That means that all those pardons that he gave to some very bad people, very unpatriotic people, very evil people, it looks to me like those pardons.
What does cashless bail mean? It means like if you're arrested and you're awaiting trial, you depending on your crime and depending on the circumstances, you can be let out on bail without providing any collateral that you have to take later. You know, I don't know. I'm a little bit like on this. I'm a little bit like hem and haw on this. Crime overall is down, but so much crime in major cities is caused by like 5 people. You know, it's caused by like 5 people who keep getting arrested and released over and over and over again. And I don't understand why. I genuinely do not understand it. I'm not trying to Anna Kasparian all of you, but like so often when you hear about some violent crime taking place in the city, you see their picture and they look all f***ed up, and then you read the article and it's like, yeah, he's been arrested 63 times over the past 10 years. And it's like, damn, really? None of those 63 arrests did they decide to like keep his ass in jail? At no point was that decided to be a priority. That wasn't important. I don't know. I don't really get it. That's not cashless bail, though. The cashless bail isn't necessarily why that's happening.
Are worthless. Because, number one, you shouldn't use an auto pen, very specifically. But if you do, it has to be a very good reason. And they have to know that the president wanted it. The president didn't want this. The president didn't know he was...
That surely is not the majority of cases or offenses, right? Listen, I genuinely don't understand the disparity, because for the most part, we have a pretty punitive justice system. We have a lot of people in prison. We had the most per capita before El Salvador beat us out. We have, for the most part, like pretty aggressive sentencing. Things take a while. Like it's not as though we, you know, move particularly quickly, but we also don't set very, very low bails in the cases that we do. I just think for the most part that our system is full of people who are on the more punitive scale of things, at least with regards to like a Western democracy. Or former democracy, if you prefer. I don't understand how you can have a system where there are a bunch of people serving time in prison, 20 years in prison, over having like an ounce of weed on their person when getting pulled over for running a red light. But then also you have people who are out like on bail, or not even on bail, with like 63 former arrests. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
He was alive, okay? He never approved any of this stuff. He wasn't for open borders and all the other things. He was never for open borders. I've known Biden a long time. He was never very sharp.
That's fine.
Lastly, sir, this is an executive order on flag burn.
Did we? Is it scrolling me down? I swear to God, I was panning up on the page.
Law enforcement who are out there every single night.
Yes.
Thank you for putting me in charge of this surge as the director of the United States Marshal Service. It's the oldest law enforcement agency. It was created in 1789. So on behalf of all the federal law enforcement agencies that we're working with and those that have yet to join the team, we thought it was only appropriate to present you with an honorary United States Marshal Service badge. And this badge comes with this little item
my
right
God.
here.
It's like a 8-year-old with cancer who gets to ride in the passenger seat of the fire truck. Every time, it really is like he's an old-time absolute monarch, because people, like delegations, keep bringing him gifts, you know? He's like a fat little child emperor who claps and is, you know, every time, you know, a delegation arrives with something new and shiny.
Which is a handcuff key, Mr. President, because you continue through your policies and your efforts with your staff to unhandcuff law enforcement officers all over this nation. And I can tell you personally that they thank you for that.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
You can continue unhandcuffing law enforcement.
That's a very great honor. I'll save that and put it someplace up, which is important. Thank you.
And the funny thing is that he doesn't give a shit, because Trump has always thought of cops and soldiers to be suckers, and he doesn't give a shit about them. He's never really been like a cop or a military guy. Yeah, that shit's going like in an attic cupboard somewhere. He just likes big shiny gold things that make him feel like a king. He doesn't give a shit about this. You could tell how disinterested he was just watching that. He was so happy getting the like World Cup trophy. You know, when the guy was like, you can touch it because you're a winner. Did you see that?
Thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Really nice. Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Look at Governor Pritzker in Illinois, or Governor Newsom in Los Angeles, or Governor Moore in Maryland. They are angrier about the fact that the President of the United States is offering to help them get their crime under control than they are about the fact that murderers are running roughshod over their cities and have been for decades. Why are Democrat governors angrier about federal law enforcement helping clean up their streets than they are about the fact that those streets need to be cleaned up to begin with? It should.
Thank you. Very good. Very good. Well done.
Say a few words.
Thank you, sir. So just to, first of all, follow up on what the Vice President said, no police officer working in the city can remember a time in their lives when there has been no murders. You can work at the police department for 20 years, 30 years, your whole life. We've checked the records.
Happened
no
earlier
one can
this
even
year.
find a record of being murder-free for as long as we've been murder-free under President Trump's.
What's wrong with Vance's parents? Didn't, oh, pants. I was going to make the, like, Vance's mom traded him for some Percocets joke. What's wrong with his pants? Poor tailoring. Pretty much the main problem with everything these days. Know what I'm saying? I feel like this is just the entire video. He's always saying shit.
And I'll probably be filing a suit on that pretty soon. Yeah, please.
During the campaign, you called Kamala Harris a communist, but the Biden-Harris administration, they never called for nationalizing a private company with the federal government like you're proposing with Intel. What do you say to some who say this is a bit hypocritical, and is this the new way of doing industrial policy?
Yeah, sure it is. I want to.
Oh, this is the Trump is doing full communism bit. Yeah, apparently he wants to nationalize portions of more companies. It's worth noting, though, that like what he's doing isn't actually meaningfully a nationalization of those companies in the way that socialists talk about nationalization, because it's not taking the functions of a private industry and relegating them to like state authority. It's just profit sharing. Like essentially Trump is just personally acquiring shares of a company that he can distribute to his cronies. It's a slush fund. Like the wealth that comes out of Intel now, that 10% that he's taken, that portion of the revenue now like is just part of this nebulous blob of government-owned assets that can be sort of distributed without congressional authority. That's my guess as to how it's going to be used. They're just interested in like looking over the authority of Congress. And he said he wants to do it more.
To try and get as much as I can. If people come in and they need something, as an example, as a real estate person, if I have an agreement and I have any form of a stopgap where I can stop somebody.
Why can't we do that under Biden and just pipe money back to the state? Because this is like insane. It's insane because this is a protection racket, right? The deal that these companies are making is they think it would be better to pay out like the protection racket payments to Trump than it would be to pay extra taxes under a different administration. And the way things were going with the Democrats, like it was possible that even these limp dick Democrats actually would at some point raise taxes on the wealthy. The country's going to collapse if we don't. Genuinely, like we're in a debt crisis right now, the likes of which can't really be managed without some kind of without some kind of like massive tax hike. No, they pay some nuts. And there's also personal income tax. Not all of it can be avoided. I think that a lot of these wealthy fucks would rather pay out protection money to a dictator than they would just have higher taxes across the board, if that makes any sense. The problem with this logic, though, like the problem with this mechanism, look, here, I found it. I was stalling for time. Look at Mark Cuban. I'm the furthest from a Trump fan, but the reality is that he would have to shake very hard to equate to the shakedowns of the unrealized capital gains tax and Warren's wealth tax that were proposed. Mark Cuban is basically giving the game away here, right? Like, no matter how dictatorial Trump gets, in all likelihood, he's not going to try to extort as much money from these companies as a tax would take. The wealthy would rather deal with a dictator who just straight up demands money than a democratic government that fairly taxes some of it. Mark Cuban's some kind of liberal, right? He's one of the good ones, so it's said. Interesting, though, right? Like, the problem with this logic is that there's no way to, like, stop a dictator from continuing to shake down. Like, with a wealth tax proposed by the government, there are processes that you can go through. There are steps, there are checks, there are balances. But if Trump just decides to ask for 10% more from Intel, what could stop him? Anyway, it's not actually socialistic. In practice, it's a lot more like Nazi-esque, because Trump taking the 10% of Intel isn't really like making the company public, right? It's just taking 10% of its private wealth and assets and taking them for the administration. It's just like a different power group. It's like a state capitalism kind of deal, you know? Jimmy Dore's probably creaming himself over this. Yeah, probably. It's National Socialist. Yeah, it's National Socialist, if you prefer. Of course, everyone's talking about it like it's communistic, and they're trying to, you know, hold Trump up to the hypocrisy or whatever. Gavin Newsom posted about that, you know, communist Trump or whatever. We are forever slandered. The whole point of nationalizing a company is to subjugate it to the public authority, to regulate it directly, control its assets, and free it from the profit motive. But obviously, that's not happening with Intel, is it?
From doing something, right? I have a covenant and an agreement, and they come to me and they say, would like to do something, but you have us restricted. If I do that, they usually have to pay. Now, in the case of Intel, it was interesting, but I hope I'm going to have many.
Is it good to call it communistic if it makes MAGA mad? No, because it doesn't make MAGA mad. MAGA does not actually have any problem with communism Again, this is the hypocrisy thing. You're never going to get it. These people don't believe in anything. Their only authentic beliefs are that they hate blacks, browns, foreigners, women, etc. Fill in as many groups as you like. Those are the only authentic beliefs that they have. They will consistently fall back on those. Everything else is completely malleable and idiosyncratic. It does not matter.
More cases like it. Intel came in. I met with the gentleman. I had a lot of respect for him. He came in under a little bit of a cloud. I liked his story. I thought he was good. I think he really means to do a good job with Intel. I said, I'd like to ask whether or not you'd give the United, because the story.
He's probably doing something more like what turned into the Chaebol system in South Korea that props up certain companies by funneling money their way. Oh, you're suggesting that it might be like a preferential bailout, like Intel might have been amenable to it because they're struggling, so he offers to do 10% with Intel, just buy up their shares, give the company a couple billion, basically like a cash injection. That's also possible. Functionally, it serves the same purpose, right? Because that just means he's picked a weaker company to do this with. But, either way.
A lot of people said I invested in Intel. I didn't invest, but I invest my heart in it and my soul because I want the country to be strong. But I said, I'd like you to give 10% of Intel to the United States of America. Not to me, to the United States of America.
Uh-huh.
And I said, if you have them as a partner, you have the United States as a partner, I think that would be a very good thing for Intel. And he thought about it a little bit different, and he said, I like that idea very much. We have a deal. And I just made $10 billion or $11 billion for the United States of America.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, there will be other cases.
He didn't. He paid for the shares. He didn't actually seize them. They were paid for.
Have that opportunity again, I would do that. And then, you do have stupid people say, oh, that's a shame. It's not a shame. It's called business. If somebody's willing to give you 10% of a company and you're not paying for it, and I will tell you, with a company like Intel, as you know, it's had difficulty. I want them to do well. I want them to do well anyway, but I want them to do well in particular.
I'm pretty sure Hitler did something similar with German companies back then. Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. I mean, the critical difference, right, is that the socialist wants to take private corporations and fold them into the state by nationalizing them. The fascist wants to turn the state into a private corporation, which I think to a large extent has been happening for decades in the US, but Trump is definitely accelerating the process. All of the naked corruption, graft, wheeling and dealing, quid pro quo bullshit, like very much is not governmental, like trying to run the government like a business. Republicans have been threatening to do this for ages. So have some neoliberals. So, I mean, we're kind of getting what they promised. Well, the Nazis also did privatize a lot. Yes, but what I think is important, to keep in mind is that often when the Nazis privatized, they were owned privately by people in the high cabinet of the Nazis, right? Like the private public distinction is abolished under fascism, not because everything is nationalized, but because there's no functional difference between the political and the economic elite. Like the private, this is like the distinction, right? Like the meaningful difference is like whether it's the apparatus of the state or the meaning of the state that controls these corporations, right? If it's the apparatus, then it's only the people who run the state. And if it's a dictatorship, then why isn't it just a private corporation? Would you say then that, Putin is a socialist because he personally owns so many of the businesses that were privatized after the fall of the Soviet Union, right? Just because he's, the president? No, of course not. Obviously, it's more about whether or not the meaning of state ownership is carried over. The fact that they are then freed from the profit motive and folded into the apparatus of the state. But obviously, that's not what's happening here. It's a different kind of social. It's a different kind of something. Apparently, Kevin O'Leary is mad about this, which is funny. I wonder if he and a bunch of other wealthy people see the writing on the wall.
One more question for you before you go. It is a curveball, but because I haven't seen you in a long time, and we always...
God, he's ugly. I'm sorry.
Always have some pretty raucous debates about capitalism. I am so curious, if you'd indulge me, what your opinion is of the government, U.S. government, taking a stake in Intel on Friday. Do you have a take on this, sir? I bet you do.
Yes. I abhor this idea. I really do. What has made America so great for 200 years is the government stays in its lane and the private sector does what it does so successfully and attracts 52 cents of every dollar from around the world into its capital markets. We let dead old companies die in our version of capital markets. Intel should have been sold for car parts 3 years ago. I do not want to invest in it as an investor, and I have no interest in taking my tax dollars and giving it to a company.
This shit goes so hard if you're economically retired. Well, what he's saying here is correct. It is bad business for the government to prop up dying companies with the money in a sort of like quid pro quo exchange of power, so that partial ownership of the companies is held in practice in a slush fund that the executive branch controls. Rare dub on him here. I mean, it's bad capitalism, but whatever. I feel like a lot of this is not the first time that like business owners have been quaking in their boots a little bit, right? Like, there's a reason why the Financial Times has never liked Trump. There are a lot of wealthy people, but Kevin O'Leary is more of an oligarch than he is a corporatist. You know, Kevin O'Leary isn't like a Warren Buffett type. He's not like a sits at the desk and plays with numbers type. He's a big, stupid idiot. He's a dumb, fat, ugly piece of shit who wants attention and wants to go on Fox News every day and wants to talk about such and such. So I think it's interesting that somebody like him, and such a Trump ass kisser too, such a sycophant, would dislike this so publicly. Which, I mean, it's reasonable. It's in his economic interest to not like it, because the whole system that he gained his wealth on kind of relies on certain rules that Trump's administration is breaking. Is he in Trump's circle? He's not in Trump's circle, but he desperately wants to be. That's the impression I've gotten. He's wealthy, but he doesn't have ownership over the assets that you would need to be useful politically in America when it comes to like controlling the country. So he's very wealthy and he's very loud and very annoying, but he mostly just goes on, Fox or CNBC or whatever and yells about how, the Democrats are destroying America through wokeness or whatever. I don't think he's actually in the inner circle. He's not even a billionaire. Isn't he like 1 or 2 billion? Worth 400 mil? Oh, I thought he like just barely kept over $1 billion. You notice we haven't seen shit from Lutnick in like months. Well, what the would you want to do if you were you want to defend this shit if you're Lutnick? Jesus Christ.
That has performed so miserably. Why would anybody want to own this thing? Take it behind the barn and shoot it. That's what should be happening to Intel.
Kevin O'Leary, tell us
how you really feel. No, seriously. Conservatives speak out against U.S. 10% stake in Intel. Please.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell sent his strongest signal yet on Friday that the central bank is likely to lower interest rates next month.
Yeah.
In a closely watched speech in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Powell cited sweeping change. Some of those were in the White House and shift, but specifically in the interest of he posted that the government owning part of Intel was far from the Trump administration over the announcement late last week that it had taken a 10% stake in Intel. President Trump's calling the move a great deal for America and for Intel, but others in his party are calling it socialism. Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky posted that the government owning part of
a Rand Paul criticism on this point hardly counts as conservative speaking out. Of course he would speak out against this.
Intel would be, in his words, a step towards socialism, and called it a terrible idea. Conservative radio host Eric Erickson said, quote, "This is socialism with an R next to its name." And the editorial board of the conservative magazine National Review wrote this headline, quote, "The government shouldn't get into the chip business."
That's it. Rand Paul in the National Review. I'm telling you guys, conservatives don't give a shit about this, okay? The mind of the average person today, or we could even go contemporary. The mind of the average like diehard Stalinist was not that different from the mind of the average diehard Nazi. Economic positions are a means to an end. If whatever you're doing in government is being used to oppress the right minorities, fascists will co-sign it. They love that shit. There's no principled consistency. Listen, okay, don't think of it that way. It's not that fascists are unprincipled in this respect. It's that they just don't care. It's not a part of their principles. Like neocons are the aggressively capitalist ones, but fascists, the MAGA movement has been like to a large extent anti-international capitalism for a decade now. For a decade now, Trump supporters have talked about how America has been hollowed out by international corporations. Their principles, are about bigotry. They're not about capitalism. They're pro-suffering, exactly. They love suffering. I do want to see them defend it, though.
President Trump announcing Intel has agreed to give the U.S. government a 10% stake in the company. Joining us right now, talk about that and so much more. We're going to talk about Jay Powell and everything else. White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. Kevin, it is great to see you this morning. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Oh, yeah.
So here's the question. Ronald Reagan famously said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
He was stupid and senile.
You remember that line, and it's
Sure.
a line that I think
It's a
it's been
great line,
used by Republicans for the last several decades, until maybe Friday. Can you explain the rationale behind taking this 10% stake?
Right. Well, it's not really a taking, right? The bottom line is that because of the CHIPS Act, the U.S. government had decided to give a whole bunch of money to Intel, and the President Trump and Howard Lutnick, Secretary Lutnick, talked to Intel about the progress they were making in the hurdles that they had to hop over in order to get the money, and I don't think they're particularly happy.
Does he not look exactly like Colin from What We Do in the Shadows? The energy vampire. He has that same stupid smile and that like high, like cleft palate way of talking where it sounds like he's always making fun of you.
With that progress, and so in the end they worked out a deal.
Like this is the face of a guy who knows perfectly well that what's happening is insane and indefensible, but he has his job to defend it. Fascists treat reality like an improv prompt, where if they're wrong about something, it's a creative exercise to get out of it. Like, there's never a point where you'll catch them on anything because they're not really that invested in being right.
Intel is going to get the CHIPS money, but in exchange, we're going to get some equity, and equity is not voting, so there's not going to be government intrusion into the business of Intel. It's more like a down payment on a sovereign wealth fund, which many, many countries have.
Kevin, though, is this the beginning of a larger effort by the U.S. government to take equity stakes in other industries that we subsidize or other companies in the AI and chip space that we subsidize? So a good example is AMD. Another example might be Taiwan Semiconductor.
Right. Well, I think this is a very, very special circumstance because of the massive amount of CHIPS Act spending that was coming Intel's way. But the president has made it clear all the way back to the campaign that he thinks that in the end, it would be great if the U.S. could start to build up a sovereign wealth fund. And so I'm sure.
Again, see? Sovereign wealth fund, i.e. a pool of money that the executive can control that Congress doesn't have to budget for. That's what they're looking to do. Imagine trying to build a sovereign wealth fund when you're like $38 trillion in debt. And your deficit is multiple trillions of dollars every year. Oh yeah, dude, sovereign wealth fund.
At some point there'll be more transactions, if not in this industry, in other industries.
Okay, so we should expect the U.S. government to be taking more equity stakes in businesses around the country. That is something that if you're a CEO this morning watching us, you should say, okay, the sovereign wealth fund may be coming and trying to effectively buy in some kind of equity stake.
It's possible, yeah, that's absolutely right. You know, that if in the past the federal government has been giving money away lickety-split to companies, and the taxpayers have received nothing in return. And so now what's happening with the Intel deal is the CHIPS Act money is going out as planned, but instead of it just going out and disappearing into the ether, the U.S. taxpayers are getting a little bit of equity.
This is not how money works, by the way. Like, this is not how equity works, money works, tax rebates work. None of this is how this works.
Really not see how anyone would think that's a bad thing, unless you thought that the government was then going to go in and run the company. But these are going to be shares that don't have voting rights. The government's going to stay out of it.
Well, it goes back a little bit to the Ronald Reagan quote that I started with, which is when, for many, many years, you know, you and I used to have conversations about Solyndra and how I think you thought that that was a terrible, terrible mistake for the U.S. government to be getting involved in. We have been exporting the idea of a free market around the world for as long as I can remember, and this is a major shift. Do you not agree?
No, I think this is a very special case of Biden committed the money. You know, President Trump and Howard Lutnick weren't very clear that they wanted to continue to let the money go out because the...
Again, to be clear, the way they were able to get this out of Intel is by exchanging it for the right to sell those chips in China. Like, Intel was looking... This is effectively an export tax. Just like with the loop around, right? With a workaround. But Intel wanted the ability to sell chips in China. You need to get permission from the government, because sometimes we don't let corporations sell their products to other companies. For example, if Lockheed Martin wanted to sell their like top of the line military goods over to Iran, we would tell them, no, you can't actually do that. We are forbidding you from doing that. And it would be a crime in America if you tried to do that. And historically, we have never exchanged the right to sell to a different country in a different country for money, right? Because that would be an export tax, functionally, a tax on somebody's ability to export their product. But that's what we did with Intel. They wanted to sell in China, and we said, well, you get it. So it is a little bit of a red flag to other companies, because it does kind of suggest that we're going to start doing this quid pro quo bullshit now every time companies want to deal fairly in the United States.
The paths weren't being crossed, the hurdles weren't being crossed. And so I think it's a very special case. But again, the general principle that if the U.S. government is able to create a situation that benefits everybody, then it should benefit the taxpayers too.
But if you're saying that this is really just the beginning of more as it relates to a sovereign wealth fund or something else, it would be suggestive of something very different. And I wonder how we in the United States and maybe even around the world should think about the idea of national champions, which is something that we've been, and the Republican Party in particular, has been quite critical of for years.
No, I mean, we're absolutely not in the business of picking winners and losers, but this is not a thing that is unprecedented. If you look at it right now, the U.S.
It's totally unprecedented.
Government owns most everything of Fannie and Freddie, and the president, led by Bill Pulte and Howard.
That has nothing to do with export tariffs or like bullying. Fannie and Freddie cratered themselves out, and we stepped in to help them.
Nick and Scott Bessent.
Also, by the way, everyone criticized that, including the MAGA movement. Everyone is still mad about the bailouts after 2008 and the fact that a bunch of people on Wall Street didn't get sent to the device afterwards. That's enough of this guy. Hostage video?
I'm sitting with Lip-Bu in my office, and at 3 o'clock, we're going to sign the document together in the Oval Office, where the United States of America will own 9.9% of the great American technology company Intel. I can't be more excited for America and for Intel that we get to work together.
First of all, thank you so much,
This really does feel like a hostage video.
Secretary. And this is a very big, important historical agreement that we can work together. And then more important, I don't need the grant, but I really look forward to have the U.S. government be my shareholder, and we can work together, make Intel great again.
So what happened is Lip-Bu became the CEO of Intel, and he came to see me, and he said, you know, the Biden administration gave this company a grant of $10 billion, and we don't need a grant. We're a great company. Maybe not with the best leadership, but now it has good leadership. So he said, you know.
This is an official video put out by the government.
And that was the conversation. And then when we had the conversation with the president, he said, look, we don't want to take your money away from you, but shouldn't it be fair? And we agreed that it would be fair that the same money that you give a company, America should have shares for it, because it's just fair. And we agreed together. And then you went to your board of directors.
Yes.
And they agreed.
Yes.
It's a giant public company, so it had to be fair.
Yes.
Again, this is all bullshit. The money that was appropriated to Intel as part of the CHIPS Act was specifically for investment in the United States. The idea that the company would absolve their hold over it and accept it as payment for shares has nothing to do with the law. It's just like, it is unlawful. They're just making it up. They're just taking advantage of the fact that that money existed, because otherwise they would have had to pull that money from another source. They would have had to gotten some kind of appropriation, or they would have had to direct it out of some other fund. But it was multiple billions of dollars that went to Intel. It's pretty difficult to pull up that kind of money from nowhere.
It had to be fair.
Had to be fair.
There's no other way. And so we did it fair for Intel and for the American people. And I think this is exactly what Donald Trump is all about. I'm really excited. But today we get to do the deal.
That's right.
together.
They're way overselling all this. Yeah, definitely. My T-shirt, this was not a mob shakedown. This was a fair deal T-shirt is raising a lot of questions that are already answered by the T-shirt vibes. Jesus Christ, they're overselling it. There's the normal thing you do, by the way, when you're doing a government business deal, a public-private partnership, is have a hostage video where the CEO is like nervously nodding his head and saying, yes, yes, no, we all wanted this. Yes, for sure, 100%. Weird times. Absolutely insane. Did you see his hand bruise? Kind of wild. Yeah, guys, they've already talked about this. This is that thingy. His doctor already released a statement on this. It's not new information. This is what the concealer was covering up the other day. The reason he has bruising here is because he's on an IV drip when he's not in front of the camera, which is probably being done to compensate for a number of health issues. He is a very old man. And as you get older, like the bruising just doesn't disappear as quickly. Oh, that looks like necrosis? No, it's just bruising. You're going to disappoint yourself if you get all worked up and, excitable, okay? It's just bruising. I thought he was diagnosed with varicose veins. What was the term he was diagnosed with? It was the reason his ankles were so fat. Big sweaty boy disease? Possibly.